Hey there, welcome back. So glad you're here with me today. I've been thinking a lot lately about how we talk about love and relationships in English, and honestly, there's just so much to unpack. Like, we have all these expressions and phrases that we use every day without even thinking about them. And if you're learning English or you just want to understand the nuances better, this stuff is actually pretty fascinating. So today, I want to walk through some of these expressions with you, talk about what they really mean when people use them, and maybe share some stories along the way. Sound good? Let's dive in. Okay, so let me start with something simple. When someone says they're falling for someone, what does that actually mean? It's such a common phrase, right? You hear it in songs, in movies, everywhere. And it means you're starting to develop romantic feelings for someone. But notice the verb, falling. There's something kind of vulnerable about it, like you're losing your balance, you're not totally in control. You don't decide to fall for someone, it just happens to you. It's gradual and it's kind of scary in a way because you're putting yourself out there emotionally. So when your friend tells you, "I think I'm falling for him," she's saying she's catching feelings and it's becoming real. Now, a lot of people also use the phrase head over heels. Like, she's head over heels for that guy. This one means you're completely, totally in love. Like, you're so into this person that everything else just fades into the background. It's intense. And it's funny because technically we're always head over heels, right? Our heads are always over our heels. But the expression probably came from the idea of doing a somersault or being so dizzy with love that you're literally upside down. Either way, when someone is head over heels, they're all in. They're not just casually interested, they're deeply, wildly in love. Let's talk about love at first sight. This is a big one. Have you ever met someone and just felt this instant connection? That's what we're talking about here. It's the idea that you can fall in love with someone the very first time you see them, before you even really know them. Now, whether or not you believe in love at first sight is another story. Some people swear by it, they say they met their partner and just knew right away. Other people think it's more about physical attraction or infatuation, and that real love takes time to develop, but either way, it's a phrase you'll hear all the time. It was love at first sight when they met at that coffee shop. It's romantic, it's dramatic, and it definitely makes for a good story. Here's another one that's interesting. When someone says they have a crush on someone, what are they really saying? A crush is usually a kind of lighthearted, often one-sided romantic attraction. It's not as serious as being in love, but it's more than just thinking someone is cute. You might have a crush on a coworker, or someone you see at the gym, or even a celebrity. It's that feeling where you get a little nervous around them. You think about them more than you probably should, and you're hoping they notice you too. And crushes can be fun, right? They're exciting and new, even if they don't always lead to anything. Now, when things get more serious, people might say they're seeing someone. This is actually kind of a vague phrase on purpose. If someone says, "Yeah, I'm seeing someone," it usually means they're dating, but it might not be super official yet. Like, they're spending time together, they're romantically involved, but maybe they haven't had the big talk about being exclusive or being boyfriend and girlfriend. It's that in-between stage. So if you ask someone if they're single and they say, "Well, I'm kind of seeing someone," they're telling you they're interested in someone, but it's not fully defined yet. Then we have going out or going together. These are pretty straightforward. If two people are going out, they're dating. They're a couple. In some parts of the US, especially with younger people, you might hear going together, which means the same thing. Like, are those two going together? Means, are they dating? It's casual language, the kind of thing you'd say when you're just chatting with friends about who's with who. Let me tell you about taking things slow. This is something you hear a lot when people are being cautious about a new relationship. Maybe they've been hurt before, or maybe they just want to really get to know someone before jumping into anything serious. When someone says they want to take things slow, they mean they want to let the relationship develop naturally, without rushing into commitment or big declarations. It's about being intentional and careful, which honestly can be really healthy. Like, we're taking things slow right now, just seeing how it goes. There's wisdom in that, I think. Onde, Flip side, you might hear about a whirlwind romance. This is the opposite of taking things slow. A whirlwind romance happens fast and intensely. Think about two people who meet and within a month they're head over heels, maybe even talking about moving in together or getting engaged. It's exciting and passionate, but it can also be a little risky because you haven't really had time to know each other deeply. But some people thrive on that intensity, you know? They love the rush of it all. Here's a phrase that always makes me smile: tying the knot. When someone says they're tying the knot, they mean they're getting married. It's such a visual phrase, right? Like you're literally tying two pieces of rope together, binding yourselves to each other. And there's something really sweet about that image. It's permanent, it takes effort, and once it's tied, it's not easy to undo. So when your cousin tells you she's tying the knot next summer, start planning what you're going to wear to that wedding. And speaking of marriage, let's talk about popping the question. This specifically means asking someone to marry you. It's about the marriage proposal. So if someone says, "He finally popped the question last night," that means he proposed. And it's usually said with excitement, like this big moment finally happened. The phrase is interesting because it makes it sound casual, like popping a balloon, but we all know that proposing is actually a huge deal for most people. Now, what about when things aren't going so well? Let's talk about some expressions for when relationships hit rough patches. If someone says they're on the rocks, that doesn't mean they're at the beach with a cocktail. It means their relationship is in trouble. Like, their marriage has been on the rocks for a while now. The image comes from a ship that's run aground on rocks. It's stuck, it's damaged, it might not make it. So when a relationship is on the rocks, there are serious problems and it might not survive. Here's another one: growing apart. This happens when two people who were once close start to drift away from each other. Maybe their interests change, maybe they want different things in life, maybe they just don't connect the way they used to. It's sad, really, because it's not always anyone's fault. People change, and sometimes they change in different directions. So you might hear someone say, "We just grew apart over the years," and there's usually a lot of emotion behind that simple phrase. Then there's calling it quits. This means ending the relationship, breaking up, deciding it's over. It's pretty direct. Like, after 5 years together, they finally called it quits. There's a sense of finality to it, and often it comes after people have tried to make things work but realized it just isn't going to. It's not always an angry breakup. Sometimes people call it quits on relatively good terms. They just know it's time to move on. Let's talk about breaking up versus splitting up. These basically mean the same thing: ending a romantic relationship. Breaking up might sound a little more emotional or dramatic, like something is being shattered. Splitting up sounds maybe a bit more neutral, like two things that were together are now going separate ways. But honestly, people use them interchangeably most of the time. Did you hear they broke up? And did you hear they split up? Mean exactly the same thing. What about getting back together? This is when a couple breaks up but then decides to give it another try. Maybe they realized they missed each other, maybe they worked through whatever issues drove them apart in the first place. You hear this a lot, actually. They got back together after a few months apart. Sometimes getting back together works out great, and sometimes people fall into the same patterns and end up breaking up again. It really depends on whether they've actually addressed the underlying problems. Here's an interesting one. It's complicated. You've probably seen this as a relationship status on social media, right? When someone says their relationship is complicated, they mean it doesn't fit into a neat category. Maybe they're not officially together, but they're more than friends. Maybe they're married but separated. Maybe there are other people involved, or maybe they're working through some issues and they don't know where things stand. It's a way of saying, "I can't explain this in a simple way, there's a lot going on." Let me tell you about friend zone. This term has gotten really popular in the last couple decades. The friend zone is where you end up when you have romantic feelings for someone, but they only see you as a friend. It's that frustrating space where you want more, but the other person doesn't feel the same way. Like, I asked her out, but she totally friend-zoned me. Now, I should say, this term can be a little controversial because some people use it in a way that implies the other person owes them a romantic relationship, which obviously isn't true. But as a description of that one-sided situation, it's definitely part of modern English. What about mixed signals? This is when someone's words and actions don't match up, or when they seem interested one day and distant the next. It's confusing, right? You can't figure out how they actually feel about you. So you might say, he keeps giving me mixed signals. One minute he's texting me all the time, the next minute he's barely responding. It's frustrating because you can't get a clear read on the situation. Here's a phrase that's more positive. We just click. When you click with someone, you have an instant connection. You understand each other, conversation flows easily, you're on the same wavelength. It's that feeling where everything just works naturally. You might click with a friend, or you might click with a romantic partner. Either way, it's a beautiful thing when you find someone you really click with. Let's talk about chemistry. When people talk about having chemistry with someone, they mean there's a spark, an attraction, a special connection. It's not just about physical attraction, although that can be part of it. It's about how you interact, how you play off each other, whether there's tension and excitement when you're together. Good chemistry is hard to fake and hard to force. Either it's there or it isn't. So when someone says, "We had great chemistry on our first date," that's a really good sign. Now, settling down is what people say when someone is ready to commit to a serious, long-term relationship, usually with marriage and maybe kids in mind. It implies a shift from a more casual or independent lifestyle to something more stable and domestic. Like, he's finally ready to settle down. There's often an assumption that settling down means leaving behind a wilder or more carefree time in your life, which is interesting when you think about it. Not everyone sees it that way, but the phrase definitely carries those connotations. What about commitment issues? This is when someone has trouble committing to a serious relationship, even when they care about the other person. Maybe they're afraid of losing their independence, maybe they've been hurt before, maybe they're just not ready. Whatever the reason, commitment issues can create a lot of tension in relationships. Like, she really likes him, but he has serious commitment issues. It's a modern phrase that gets used a lot in conversations about dating. Let's talk about the one. This is such a romantic idea. When people talk about finding the one, they mean finding their perfect match, their soulmate, the person they're meant to be with. It's the idea that somewhere out there is one special person who's right for you. Like, I think she might be the one. Now, not everyone believes in this concept. Some people think there are lots of potential compatible partners out there, not just one. But as a phrase, it's definitely embedded in how we talk about love in English. Here's something you might hear: playing hard to get. This is a dating strategy where someone acts less interested than they really are, supposedly to make themselves seem more desirable. The idea is that if you're too available or too eager, you'll seem desperate, so you play it cool instead. Like, she's totally playing hard to get. Honestly, this is one of those dating games that can backfire. Sometimes the other person just thinks you're not interested and gives up. But it's definitely something people talk about. What about baggage? When someone talks about emotional baggage, they mean unresolved issues or pain from past relationships that they're bringing into their current situation. We all have some baggage, right? Past hurts, patterns we learned, fears we developed. But when someone has a lot of baggage, it can make it harder for them to be fully present in a new relationship. Like, he's got a lot of baggage from his divorce. It's not necessarily a judgment, just an acknowledgement that past experiences affect us. Let's talk about rebounds. A rebound relationship is when you start dating someone new very quickly after a breakup, often before you've really processed the end of your previous relationship. The idea is that you're bouncing back like a ball rebounds off the ground. Rebound relationships often don't last because you're not really emotionally ready, you're just trying to fill a void or distract yourself from the pain. So someone might say, that was just a rebound. It only lasted a month. Here's one that's important. Deal breaker. A deal breaker is something that's so important to you that if the other person can't meet that need or share that value, the relationship can't work. It's non-negotiable. For some people, wanting kids might be a deal breaker. For others, it could be honesty or religious beliefs or how they handle money. Like cheating is a total deal breaker for me. Everyone has different deal breakers, and that's okay. They help you figure out who's truly compatible with you. On the other hand, red flags are warning signs that something might be wrong in a relationship. Maybe the person is controlling, or they're dishonest, or they treat service workers badly. These are behaviors or traits that suggest potential problems down the line. Like, he was really rude to the waiter. That's a red flag. The tricky thing is, sometimes we ignore red flags when we really like someone, even though we probably shouldn't. Let's talk about something more positive. Puppy love. This refers to the innocent, sweet romantic feelings that young teenagers have, usually their first crushes or first relationships. It's called puppy love because it's seen as adorable but not necessarily serious or lasting. Like, oh, that's just puppy love. They're 14. There's definitely a condescending quality to the phrase sometimes, but it can also be used affectionately to describe that pure, uncomplicated kind of young love. What about being smitten? If you're smitten with someone, you're completely charmed by them. You're captivated, enchanted, maybe even a little starstruck. It's more intense than just liking someone. There's an old-fashioned quality to this word, but people still use it. Like, he's absolutely smitten with her. He can't stop talking about her. It's a sweet word, I think. Here's a phrase that can mean a few different things. Seeing someone. Wait, didn't I already talk about this one? Actually, yes, but let me add something. In some contexts, especially when said with a certain tone, seeing someone can imply a more casual, possibly even secretive relationship. Like if someone asks, "Are you two together?" and the response is, "We're seeing each other," it might mean they're not ready to label it yet, or maybe it's not exclusive. The vagueness is part of the point. Let's talk about exclusive. When two people decide to be exclusive, they're agreeing to only date each other, not see other people. This is a pretty important conversation in modern dating. Like, we had the talk and decided to be exclusive. Before you're exclusive, you might both be dating other people, but once you decide to be exclusive, you're committed to just each other, even if you're not officially boyfriend and girlfriend yet. What about DTR? This stands for define the relationship. It's that conversation where you sit down and talk about what you are to each other. Are you casually dating? Are you boyfriend and girlfriend? Are you heading towards something serious? The DTR talk can be nerve-wracking because you're putting yourself out there, but it's also really important for making sure you're on the same page. Like, we need to DTR soon. I have no idea where this is going. Here's something people say when things are going really well. We're in a good place. This means the relationship is healthy and happy. There aren't major problems, you're both content, things are stable. It's a simple phrase, but it says a lot. Like, after that rough patch last year, we're finally in a good place again. It suggests relief and contentment. Let's talk about opposites attract. This is the idea that sometimes people with very different personalities or interests are drawn to each other. Maybe one person is outgoing and the other is quiet. Maybe one loves adventure and the other loves staying home. The phrase suggests that these differences can actually create a spark. Like, they're such opposites, but somehow it works. Of course, the flip side is that sometimes those differences can also cause conflict. But the initial attraction is definitely real for a lot of couples. What about two peas in a pod? This is the opposite idea. When people are like two peas in a pod, they're very similar. They have the same interests, the same sense of humor, the same values. They just get each other. Like, those two are like two peas in a pod. They even finish each other's sentences. It's about compatibility through similarity. Here's one you might not hear as much anymore, but it's still around. Going steady. This is an old-fashioned way of saying you're in an exclusive relationship. It was really popular in the 1950s and 60s. Like, are you two going steady? It's kind of sweet and innocent sounding, which is probably why it feels a bit dated now. But you'll still hear it occasionally, especially in older movies or books. Let's talk about long-distance relationship, or LDR. This is exactly what it sounds like, a romantic relationship where the two people live far apart and can't see each other regularly. Long-distance relationships can be really challenging because you miss the physical presence and everyday connection. But with technology now, with video calls and texting, they're more manageable than they used to be. Still, when someone says they're in a long-distance relationship, you know they're dealing with extra challenges. What about ghosting? This is a more recent term that's become super common. Ghosting is when someone you're dating suddenly stops all communication with you. They don't return your texts, they don't call, they just disappear like a ghost. No explanation, no closure, nothing. It's really hurtful when it happens. Like, I thought things were going well, but then he totally ghosted me. It's become unfortunately common in the age of dating apps and digital communication. On a related note, breadcrumbing is when someone gives you just enough attention to keep you interested, but never actually commits to anything real. They're leaving little breadcrumbs of attention, like texts here and there, but nothing substantial. It's a way of keeping someone on the hook without actually investing in a relationship. Pretty manipulative, if you ask me. Here's another modern one: Netflix and chill. Now, this started out as exactly what it sounds like, watching Netflix and relaxing together. But it's become a euphemism for hooking up, getting physical. So if someone invites you over for Netflix and chill, they might not actually be that interested in watching a show. It's become kind of a joke phrase now because everyone knows what it really means. Let's talk about the honeymoon phase. This is the beginning of a relationship when everything is exciting and perfect. You're both on your best behavior, you're infatuated with each other, you can't get enough of each other. It's called the honeymoon phase because it's like that blissful period right after a wedding. But here's the thing, it doesn't last forever. Eventually, you settle into something more real and everyday. Like, they're still in the honeymoon phase. Wait until they have their first real fight. What about work on the relationship? This phrase acknowledges that good relationships take effort. They don't just happen automatically. You have to communicate, compromise, grow together. When someone says they're working on their relationship, it usually means they're going through a challenging time, but they're committed to making it better. Like, we've been seeing a couples therapist. We're really working on our relationship. There's something admirable about that commitment to improvement. Here's a phrase that can be both good and bad: set in their ways. When someone is set in their ways, they have established habits and patterns that are hard to change. This can be a problem in relationships because flexibility and compromise are important. Like, he's so set in his ways, he won't even try the restaurant I suggested. On the other hand, knowing yourself and what you need isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just depends on the context. Let's talk about better half. This is an affectionate term people use for their spouse or partner. It suggests that your partner makes you complete, they're the better part of you. Like, I have to check with my better half before I commit to plans. It's sweet, although some people find it a little old-fashioned or codependent, but it's definitely still used, especially by people who have been married for a while. What about significant other? This is a neutral term for your romantic partner, regardless of whether you're married or just dating, regardless of gender. It's inclusive and flexible. Like, I'm bringing my significant other to the party. You'll also see it abbreviated as SO in text messages and online. It's become really common because it works for any kind of romantic relationship. Here's one that always sounds a bit dramatic: the love of my life. When someone calls another person the love of their life, they mean this is the most important romantic relationship they'll ever have. This is the person they love more than anyone else, the person they want to spend forever with. Like, after we got divorced, I never thought I'd meet anyone again, but then I met her. She's the love of my life. It's a big statement, full of meaning. Let's talk about wear your heart on your sleeve. This means you're very open about your emotions. You don't hide how you feel. If you wear your heart on your sleeve, people can tell when you're happy, sad, angry, or in love. You're emotionally transparent. Like, he wears his heart on his sleeve. You always know exactly how he feels. This can be a beautiful quality, although it can also make you vulnerable. What about carry a torch for someone? This is an old-fashioned phrase that means you still have feelings for someone, often someone from your past. You're carrying a torch, keeping the flame alive, even though the relationship might be over or never really started. Like, she's been carrying a torch for him for years, even though he married someone else. It's usually tinged with sadness or unrequited feelings. Here's a positive one: match made in heaven, when two people are. A match made in heaven, they're perfect for each other. They're so well suited that it seems like fate or divine intervention brought them together. Like, those two are a match made in heaven. They complement each other perfectly. It's the ultimate compliment for a couple. Let's talk about old flame. An old flame is someone you used to date, an ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend. The flame metaphor suggests that the relationship burned hot at one time, even if it's not burning anymore. Like, I ran into an old flame at the grocery store yesterday. It was so awkward. There's often a bit of nostalgia or even lingering attraction when people talk about old flames. What about leading someone on? This is when you make someone think you're interested in them romantically when you're really not. You might flirt with them, spend time with them, even be physically affectionate, but you don't actually want a relationship. It's kind of cruel, honestly. Like, I thought he liked me, but he was just leading me on. It's about giving false hope. Here's one that's important: unconditional love. This is love without conditions, without expectations. You love someone for who they are, not for what they do for you or how they make you feel. Parents often talk about having unconditional love for their children. In romantic relationships, it's more complicated, but the idea is that you love your partner even when they mess up, even when things are hard. Like, that's what real love is: unconditional love. It's an ideal that's hard to live up to, but beautiful when it happens. Let's talk about whipped. This is kind of a joking, sometimes mean-spirited term for when someone is totally under their partner's control. Like, they do whatever their partner wants, they're always checking in, they can't make decisions without their partner's approval. Friends might tease someone by saying, "Dude, you're so whipped." It's not really a compliment. It suggests you've lost your independence or your identity in the relationship. What about power couple? This is when both people in a relationship are successful, ambitious, and impressive in their own right. They support each other, and together they're even more powerful. Think of famous couples where both people have major careers. Like, they're such a power couple. She's a CEO and he's a best-selling author. It's about mutual respect and shared success. Here's something that can happen in long-term relationships: taking each other for granted. This means you stop appreciating your partner because you're so used to having them around. You forget to say thank you, you don't notice the little things they do, you expect them to always be there without putting in effort yourself. Like, I think we started taking each other for granted, and that's when the problems began. It's something to watch out for in any relationship. Let's talk about make or break. A make or break situation is one that will determine whether the relationship survives or ends. It's a critical moment or challenge. Like, this move across the country is going to be make or break for us. The stakes are high, and the outcome will decide the future of the relationship. What about love language? This concept has become really popular in the last couple decades. The idea is that people express and receive love in different ways. Some people's love language is words of affirmation, others prefer physical touch, quality time, acts of service, or receiving gifts. Understanding your partner's love language can help you show love in a way they actually feel it. Like, his love language is acts of service, so when I do the dishes, he feels really loved. Here's one that's sad but common: growing apart. I mentioned this earlier, but it's worth repeating because it's such a common experience. When couples grow apart, they're no longer on the same path. Their lives are heading in different directions. It often happens slowly over years. You wake up one day and realize you don't really know each other anymore. Like, we didn't fight or anything, we just grew apart. It's a gentle way of describing a painful reality. Let's talk about the spark is gone. Couples sometimes say this when they've lost that feeling of excitement and attraction they used to have. The relationship has become routine, maybe even boring. The spark, that initial chemistry and passion, has fizzled out. Like, We still care about each other, but the spark is gone. The question then becomes whether you can reignite it or if the relationship has run its course. What about serial monogamist? This describes someone who always seems to be in a relationship. They're monogamous, meaning they only date one person at a time, but as soon as one relationship ends, they jump into another one. They're never single for long. Like, she's such a serial monogamist. She's had 5 serious relationships in the last 6 years. It's not necessarily criticism, just an observation about someone's pattern. Here's a more serious one: toxic relationship. This term has become really common, and it refers to a relationship that's unhealthy, where one or both people are being hurt emotionally, mentally, or even physically. There might be manipulation, constant fighting, jealousy, control, or other harmful patterns. Like, I finally realized I was in a toxic relationship and I had to get out. It's important to recognize these patterns and protect yourself. Let's talk about ultimatum. An ultimatum is when you give your partner a final demand. It's a this or else situation. Like, she gave him an ultimatum: either he proposes within the year or she's leaving. Ultimatums can be necessary sometimes, especially if someone keeps avoiding commitment or refusing to address serious problems. But they're also risky because they're confrontational and can backfire. What about meet in the middle? This is about compromise. When both people in a relationship are willing to meet in the middle, they're each giving up a little bit of what they want in order to find a solution that works for both of them. Like, we couldn't agree on where to live, so we met in the middle and chose a city that was between our 2 first choices. Healthy relationships require this kind of give and take. Here's one that's become really popular lately: love bombing. This is when someone overwhelms you with affection, attention, and declarations of love very early in the relationship. It seems romantic at first, but it's often a manipulation tactic. Once they've got you hooked, the behavior changes. Like, he was love bombing me with gifts and constant texts, but then he became controlling. It's important to watch out for this pattern. Let's talk about the talk. This usually refers to that conversation where you define the relationship or discuss something serious. It could be the exclusivity talk, or the where is this going talk, or even the we need to break up talk. Like, I think we need to have the talk. We can't keep avoiding this. The talk is never easy, but it's necessary for clarity and honesty. What about friends with benefits? This is a relationship where 2 people are friends but also have a physical relationship without romantic commitment. It's supposed to be casual and uncomplicated, but it often gets messy because feelings can develop. Like, we're just friends with benefits, nothing serious. Whether this arrangement actually works long-term is debatable, but it's definitely a modern relationship category. Here's something positive: bring out the best in each other. When partners bring out the best in each other, they inspire each other to be better people. They encourage growth, they support dreams, they challenge each other in healthy ways. Like, I love how they bring out the best in each other. They're both better people because of this relationship. That's what you want, right? Someone who makes you want to be your best self. Let's talk about third wheel. If you're a third wheel, you're the extra person hanging out with a couple, which can feel awkward. You're the odd one out. Like, I went to the movies with them, but I felt like such a third wheel. Sometimes it's fine, especially if everyone is comfortable, but other times it's uncomfortable because the couple is focused on each other and you're just there. What about double date? This is when 2 couples go out together. It can be a fun way to socialize and get to know your partner's friends. Like, we should go on a double date with Sarah and Mike. It takes some pressure off because you're not just focused on each other the whole time, but it also means you have to share your partner's attention. Here's one that's important to understand: space. When someone asks for space in a relationship, they need some time and distance to think or to deal with their own stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean they want to break up, although sometimes it's a precursor to that. Like, I need some space right now to figure out what I want. Giving someone space can be hard, especially when you're worried about the relationship, but sometimes it's necessary. Let's talk about rekindle the romance. This means trying to bring back the romantic feelings and excitement that might have faded over time. Long-term couples often talk about needing to rekindle the romance through date nights, trips, or just making more effort. Like, we're planning a trip to Paris to rekindle the romance. It's about remembering why you fell in love in the first place and creating new experiences together. What about off and on relationship? This describes a couple who breaks up and gets back together repeatedly. They can't quite make it work, but they can't quite let go either. Like, they've been in an off and on relationship for 3 years now. These relationships can be exhausting because there's never real stability. Or resolution. Here's one more. Meant to be. When people say something is meant to be, they believe it's fate or destiny. It was supposed to happen. When talking about relationships, saying you're meant to be suggests that the universe brought you together for a reason. Like, I really think we're meant to be together. It's a romantic notion that gives meaning to the relationship, even if not everyone believes in that kind of predestination. You know, what I find so interesting about all these expressions is how they reveal our attitudes about love and relationships. The language we use shapes how we think about these experiences, and how we think about them shapes the language we create. It's this beautiful, complicated cycle. And English has developed such a rich vocabulary around relationships because, well, relationships are central to human experience. We're always trying to understand them, describe them, navigate them. Think about how different cultures have different ways of talking about love. In some languages, there are multiple words for different kinds of love. English mostly just has the one word, love, and then we use all these phrases and expressions to add nuance. We distinguish between falling in love and being in love, between liking someone and having a crush, between casual dating and serious commitment. All these little distinctions matter because relationships are complex, and we need precise language to talk about them. And the language keeps evolving, too. Think about terms like ghosting or breadcrumbing or love bombing. These are relatively new additions to our vocabulary, responding to new dating patterns that have emerged with technology and changing social norms. 20 years ago, you couldn't ghost someone the way you can now because we weren't all connected by phones 24/7. The technology changed how we date, and the language adapted to describe these new behaviors. I also think it's interesting how some of these expressions can be gendered. Like, we tend to talk about men being whipped or women playing hard to get. These stereotypes are built into the language itself, which is something to be aware of. Language isn't neutral. It reflects the assumptions and values of the culture that creates it. So when we use these expressions, we're not just describing relationships. We're also reinforcing certain ideas about how relationships work and how men and women are supposed to behave in them. But here's the thing you get. To choose how you use language, you can push back against stereotypes, you can use expressions in new ways, you can even create new phrases that better describe your experience. Language belongs to all of us, and it changes when we use it differently. That's actually pretty empowering when you think about it. So whether you're navigating the early stages of falling for someone, dealing with the challenges of a long-term relationship, or processing a breakup, having the right words to express what you're feeling makes a real difference. It helps you communicate with your partner, it helps you understand your own emotions, and it helps you connect with friends who might be going through similar experiences. And that's really what I wanted to share with you today. All these expressions, from the sweet ones like head over heels and meant to be, to the challenging ones like on the rocks and toxic relationship, they're tools for understanding and talking about one of the most important parts of being human. Love and relationships are complicated, messy, beautiful, painful, and amazing, sometimes all at once. And having the language to describe all those dimensions makes the journey a little bit easier. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today and exploring these expressions. I hope this was helpful, whether you're learning English or just thinking about how we talk about love. If you have other expressions you'd like me to cover, or if there are topics you want to hear about, definitely let me know. I love hearing from you. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other. Bye for now.